Welcome to Biochemistry Simplified. Glowing star, in today's video, we're diving into the fascinating world of bioenergetics, the science behind how our cells produce and use energy to power life. Stay tuned as we break it down step by step, making complex concepts simple and easy to understand. Don't forget to hit subscribe for more engaging biochemistry insights. Let's get started.
Hello, welcome to Biochemistry Simplified. My name again is DR.ELIC, and I want to welcome you specially to 2025 and say Happy New Year, even though the year is fast running. Today we want to continue on bioenergetics, and this is part 2. I want to do a quick recap of what we had in part 1 so that you could follow if you had not, if you were not in the lecture in part 1. But I strongly encourage that you listen to the short lecture in part 1 to know the details of what was taught. We actually looked at thermodynamics in terms of Gibbs free energy, entropy of the reaction, and we look at the conditions at which this entropy operates, and how to know when it's an entropy of a reaction, when it's an entropy, and to know this unique relationship between the Gibbs free energy, the entropy of the reaction, the entropy, and of course the temperature. That's pretty much about what we looked at the first lecture. Today we want to begin this lecture by looking at the science frame. In science generally, we need a science frame for all comparative measurements. So I'll start by saying in science generally, we need a reference frame. We need a reference frame sorry about that. We need a reference frame for all comparative measurements. Okay. For all comparative measurements, that's S. Okay, so what do I mean by that? So if we are going to make a bunch of measurements for different reactions, we need to set up conditions such that we run these reactions under the same conditions, so we can actually compare one reaction to another or one circumstances to another. We cannot have the temperature being one thing and in one experiment, and in another experiment the temperature is another thing. So therefore you begin to have different conditions. So thus in science we need a reference frame for all comparative measurements. This is profoundly important. In thermodynamics especially, these properties are calculated according to the following standards. So in thermodynamics especially, in thermodynamics we have the following standards with which we calculate these properties and these measurements. So we have the following standards. So what are they? So for temperature, which is as follows. For temperature, we have temperature having a standard of 25 degrees Celsius, which is 298 Kelvin. Okay, then all aqueous solution are at 1 molar. Okay, so all aqueous solution, all aqueous solution are always at 1 molar. That's as a standard, 1 molar concentration as a standard. Then all gaseous solution, or all gaseous species rather, not solutions, all gaseous species are at what? 1 atmosphere. At 1 atmosphere. And of course temperature. So the whole of these are usually measured with a superscript 0. Now the superscript that is used is to let us know that these numbers are in standards. So when you see the calculation of Gibbs free energy having a superscript 0, it simply means these measurements of whatever calculation we have done, we are done under standard conditions. So thus under standard conditions, under standard conditions, we have the following. Okay, under standard conditions of what? Of temperature, so under standard condition of temperature and pressure, what do we have? The equation now becomes, we have the following equation. We have the following. So I'll take that in the next page. So we have the following. Now under standard conditions, we have the following, which is we have the delta G naught is equal to delta H naught minus delta T delta S. Don't know if you got that. Where so this just means that the calculation are being done under standard conditions. That's this calculation here. Simply means they are being done under standard condition, and you have G naught there. So if you look at the back at the chemistry, at the back of most chemistry or thermodynamics books, you will see these formulas. Those numbers you see there, it just implies that they all are done under standard condition. As such, we need a common frame of reference so we can make such make some intelligent choices about what is going on about our thermodynamics. So next we want to look at, let me do this in blue. Next we want to look at some units in thermodynamics. Some units. Some units in thermodynamics. I seriously apologize for what my pen and the pad is doing this morning. Okay, so some units in thermodynamics. So what are those units? We'll simply look at the delta G naught, that's all under standard condition. So under standard condition, delta G naught is what? Equal to kilojoules or kg kilojoules over mole. Then your delta H naught under standard condition is also kilojoules per mole, or you can simply write kg per mole. It's also kilojoules per mole. Then your entropy, which is delta S naught, is equal to what? Joules per mole. Joules per mole Kelvin. So remember to always convert your kilojoules to joules or joules to kilojoules as necessary during your calculations. Okay, thermodynamics calculations. It is also very important to wash your units properly so that you just, or normally you can just write your what? Kg, which is kilojoules. Note, many biochemical reactions, okay, so reactions, many notes, this is worthy of notes, okay, say many biochemical reactions involves what? Hydrogen ion. Alright? Involves hydrogen ion. That is the aqueous species. And we say that the aqueous species under standard condition is what? 1 mole. Okay? Now, 1 mole of hydrogen ion, 1 mole of hydrogen ion is equals to what? Or simply implies pH is equal to what? 1. However, in biochemistry, under physiological conditions, the pH is not 1. The pH happens to be around 7.3 or 7.4. Something like that, or something like that. So there is a transformed biochemical standard. So we look at standard condition, and now under biochemical or physiological condition, there is a transformed biochemical standards, where what we do is to set the biochemical pH to 7, and the concentration of the hydrogen ion will now become 10 raised to power minus 7 mole. So when you set in under biochemical conditions, right, under physiological conditions, like I said, we have the transformed. However, under physiological conditions, sorry about that, conditions, we have the transformed biochemical standards. The transformed biochemical standards. So under these transformed biochemical standards, what you have is that your pH, all right, is not 1. Under physiological conditions, pH is equal to what? 7.0 or 7.3 or 7.4, as the case may be. In such situation, your hydrogen ion is the pH of your hydrogen ion. pH of hydrogen ion will now become, okay, 10 raised to power minus 7 molar. It is not equal to 1 as seen in under standard conditions. So this is a slightly modified standard. So this implies a slightly modified standard. So slightly modified standard. That is it. So many biochemical reactions that involves hydrogen ion and 1 molar hydrogen ion means pH equals to 1. But at physiological conditions, okay, the transformed biochemical standards are calls for the concentration of hydrogen ion equals to what? 10 raised to minus 7, as well as the concentration of magnesium that is set to 1 millimolar. This is called biochemical transformed standard. The transformed standards can be written as follows. So the transformed standard can be written as follows. So what you have with transformed standard is that you have your standard conditions that are G0, and going to transform standard becomes delta G0 prime. That prime, the number you see under the biochemical test, are all transformed biochemical standard. So under biochemical textbook, you will see some numbers. Those numbers are all transformed standard. Next, so that's pretty much about reference frame and having the standards in reference frame. In our next slide, we're going to begin to look at the spontaneity. So let's talk briefly on spontaneity of a reaction. So let's discuss spontaneity. 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 So let's see different energy diagram for spontaneity. So we have delta G greater than 0. We said this implies spontaneous. We said this implies spontaneous as written. Please recall my explanation on as written. Then we also have delta G greater than 0, and this we said implies what? Spontaneous in the reverse direction. Spontaneous in the reverse direction. In the reverse direction. Wow. So we now quickly look at the energy diagram. Let me do this in red. So if you look at the energy diagram, say this. Look at the energy diagram here. I have here something like that. Alright, so this is your energy axis and this is your reaction axis. So when you are looking at spontaneity, you begin to look at different energy diagrams and how it releases energy at different conditions. So you have, this is something like this. Alright, I hope I'm good. Now you begin to see something like this. So what you have between here, the peak of this your curve, and down here is what is known as what? Your activation energy. So this implies activation energy. Alright, so this activation energy is actually under the domain of kinetics. So under the domain of kinetics. Now down this way you have between here and where it slopes down here. Sorry. I'm able to get it again. Good. Between there and where it slopes down here, you have the between this point. Alright. Between this point and here, you have what we call delta G. So that's wondering. We have delta G greater than 0. That's between this mark. So something like this and something like this. Delta G greater than 0. So this actually depicts an energy diagram. This whole diagram actually depicts an energy diagram for a spontaneous reaction. When you say spontaneous reaction, it means it releases energy. So this is an energy diagram energy diagram for a spontaneous reaction. So that means it releases what? Energy. Wow. So that's for spontaneous reaction. So in our next page, we'll begin to look at the energy diagram for what? A non-spontaneous reaction, or a spontaneous reaction in the reverse direction. So let's go to our next page. So we'll look at this now. Energy diagram for a non-spontaneous reaction. This is our reaction as this. So in this diagram, we look at, right? So in this case, you have your delta, your activation energy around this point. Oh dear. So what you have there actually is not allowing me to write it. Okay, delta G is what? Greater than 0. And in this situation, we say that this diagram is what? An energy diagram. An energy diagram for what? An energy diagram for what? A non-spontaneous reaction. A non-spontaneous reaction, or spontaneous in reverse. Or spontaneous in what? In reverse. Okay, that's pretty much it. So what this diagram simply means is that this reaction is going to be positive delta G, while the first one is what's going to be negative delta G. Because why is it going to be positive is because the energy content of the product is what? Higher than the energy content of the reactant, as compared to the other one where the energy content of the reactant is higher than the energy content of the products. Alright, so we want to quickly look at another diagram that shows the relationship between the thermodynamics, the kinetics, and reactants and products. That we'll begin to look at our next lecture. Thank you.
Hit subscribe for more engaging biochemistry insights.